So, today we are talking about the beautiful wonderfulness that is fictional duct tape. You know how a lot of people are like, duct tape fixes a world of problems. Well, retconning is your fictional duct tape. It doesn't hold it together very well, but it will fix it for the time being. If you've ever seen that little gif of the guy slapping duct tape on the leaking pipe, yeah, that's what retconning is, but for fiction. Hence why I call it the fictional duct tape. Now, to explain what retconning is, for those of you who do not know, video-wise or otherwise, retconning was originally coined as a term due to television. The reason why was because of the fact that they would portray certain information, whether it was an interpretation of events, or how a magic system worked, or how a certain science fiction concept worked, and they'd explain it, and then later on in the plot, season 3 or 4, they'd go, oh crap, we need to change that, because if we don't change that, this scene won't work. And so as a result, they coined the term retconning, which is basically where, like I said, you use some fictional duct tape to slap together a reason why it still works. The funniest part about it is that retconning is not strictly television. It was coined as a television-based phrase, but it is not strictly television. It was also used for fiction and has been for a very long time. The issue is more just when material has already been published and therefore your fans already are aware of this material, and then you have to backpedal on that material. So as a result, it's been a thing for quite a long time. It just hasn't had a term until television came around. So a great example of this is they tell you that the reason a war started is because this person was brutally murdered. And then later they reveal that's not the real reason, and the real reason is XYZ. But the real reason no one knew that real reason was because it was a secret, you know? You kind of are seeing the fictional duct tape where it's very loose, but at the same time, people believe it and they move forward with it nonetheless because they enjoy the series. And so they allow the fictional duct tape to hold the very much rickety structure together. Retconning is not bad writing. Retconning is good writing, but sometimes it is more or less good. There's been some retconning that I've seen where it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. And then there's other times where I've seen retconning and gone, what? That didn't make sense. So it's mainly the issue of the plot hole. If the plot hole is enormous, then obviously it's going to take a lot more duct tape and it's going to be a lot flimsier. If the plot hole is really small, then it can make for good writing to just patch up the plot hole. So it depends on how big the plot hole issue is. Here are some common ways that you can work on retconning things in your own stories. First one is called hanging a lantern on it, or hang a lantern on it.
That sounds medieval for some reason.
I know, right? I always imagine like some sort of like Victorian gas lamp, like. Yep. I don't know why, but that's how I feel about it too. So with hanging a lantern on something, this term, I don't know where it was originally coined because I've heard it multiple different times, multiple different ways. So as a result, the gist of the term is that you purposely acknowledge that there is a fault in the logic. You purposely say, like, for example, if it was a magic building issue and you're like, oh, wait, but if this magic works this way, couldn't you just do this? And then you have another character go, nonsense, that would be too easy, or something like that. So you're acknowledging that this is in fact a problem. You're acknowledging that this is an issue. Or alternatively, you can hang a lantern on something by saying like, wait, couldn't your brother just fix all of our problems? And then them saying, yeah, but we don't want to go see our brother. So you're hanging a lantern on the fact that this would fix their problem, but they're choosing not to for whatever reason. With hanging a lantern on it, it is typically used with stubborn characters, like with that now, we won't ask him, even though he could fix all of our problems. Or alternatively, it is used when you've already fixed the problem and then later they're like, duh, there was such an easier way to fix your problems. That often tends to happen when the writer goes, I've come up with such a beautifully concocted plan. And then later the reader goes, why didn't they just do this? And then the writer goes, oh. I didn't think of that. I'll pretend I thought of it. And then they hang a lantern on it in the next book. This is kind of not only a fun term, but a fun thing to do because of the fact that it means you can do less world building and still get the same effect. Because the issue is that your reader feels weird about the fact that you aren't acknowledging this. So if you do acknowledge it, then the reader feels less weird, and for some reason, it satiates them. Irregardless of if it's the most flimsy argument ever, it still makes them happy. It's the equivalent of giving a tantruming toddler a gummy bear. It's not gonna fix their problems, but it's gonna fix it right now. And that's what hanging a lantern kind of does for your readers. Your readers are throwing a tantrum about something that you've done, and you give them a gummy bear, and they are quiet now. All right, next one is, as I mentioned earlier in the example, make it a secret. Make it so that whatever new knowledge that you are giving to make it so that the previous knowledge is null and void, make it be a secret, like, oh, only so-and-so knows, or, oh, the only way to get that knowledge is in a library that is cursed, currently editing a book that's like that. And I'm like, ooh, that makes it a lot more problematic. Because the whole, with this particular novel, she already has her first book out, it's cool. But with the whole idea is that she is this, foretold, prophesied being. However, everyone thinks that this foretold, prophesied being is a myth. And I was like, but why? If they have all these ancient scrolls that say that they're not a myth. And it was like, oh, because no one can get into the library because it's cursed. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So again, fixing the plot hole with retconning. Making it so it makes more sense while simultaneously still having the information available for the fictional characters. Having it be a secret, or having it be locked away for some reason, or having them discover that it's all one big, conspiracy, that can be a great way to fix it with fictional duct tape. I have to admit what's it called? The Cursed Library was one of the best fictional duct tape examples I've seen in a while because it didn't feel like fictional duct tape. It felt natural. Kind of like when you see a duct tape purse made out of duct tape, it looks cool, right? It doesn't feel like you're fixing something with duct tape. It feels like you're making something cool out of it. So you can use retconning to be very cool and very awesome. It's just often not well done in television shows, which is, I believe, why it was coined first with television shows. No offense to television. Some television shows do it well, but other television shows do not. A great example of this is if you've ever seen Journey to the Center of the Earth and then Journey to the Mysterious Island, the sequel, there was a lot of leaps and bounds made that they didn't even bother to retcon. They barely retconned it with not even duct tape, like the really flimsy Scotch tape. If I were to use an example. There are examples of it being done badly, and there are examples of it being done extremely well. Don't think that retconning is a cop-out or a bad thing. Retconning can be a very artfully used tool, just like duct tape. But it can also be used in place of something that you should be really fixing with genuine effort. So make sure that when you use retconning, you are using it as artfully as possible, because that's going to feel a lot more natural than just slapping a Band-Aid on it. That being said, next one that we're going to talk about is new info and loopholes. So, if you need to retcon something, another thing you can do is add new information to the scene. Say, oh yeah, we totally could have fixed it with this problem, but the reason we couldn't is because it takes XYZ materials, and they're like the most rare materials on Earth. That fixes your problem, right? It also, so introducing that new information of, hey, we need this ultra rare crystal to perform this spell ritual, fixes the issue. Alternatively, you can find a loophole and say, oh yeah, they had access to that crystal, but remember when that one person went to try and steal it, they kind of accidentally broke it. Or you can generally throw things in there that make it so you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, It feels a lot more natural than it does to just say, and we're ignoring that. With new information and loopholes, you gotta make sure the loophole is genuine. If you're just poking holes in your own stuff, readers don't like that. But if you find a genuine hole in your stuff and a genuine way around said loophole, by all means, utilize the heck out of that loophole. Just make sure it genuinely exists first. Creating loopholes where they don't exist is a problem. With new information, make sure that you write down that new information so you don't accidentally loophole your loopholes. Then you end up with just knitting a scarf out of your problems. You don't want to create more problems for yourself in the future, so if you're trying to fix a current problem with new information, make sure that you keep track of what new information you're introducing to the scene. Alright. Next thing is misunderstanding. This is similar to the new information, but slightly different. With the new information, it's simply, this is new information. With a misunderstanding, it's, you don't understand how it works, let me re-explain how it works, because that's a common misunderstanding of how it works. Or maybe they were taught incorrectly, and so as a result, they're like, oh, doesn't it work like this? And they're like, no, technically that's not how it works. Technically, this is how it works. You can use that to your aid and your advantage when there is a concept in your story that they were taught by someone else. Generally, if they weren't taught that concept by someone else, it makes it hard to use the misunderstanding rule, because how would they be misunderstanding something that they themselves figured out? That can happen, but it's a lot more flimsy of an argument than it is to say, oh, hey, there's a bunch of kids at this magic camp, like for example Percy Jackson, and they don't quite understand how a certain concept works, and so the gods go, let me re-explain that to you. That would be a great example of fixing something using misunderstanding, misinformation. That way you can correct the dialogue while making it seem like it's the character's fault and not your fault. Because we don't want to admit as writers, shoot, we made our own problems. We'd rather have the characters be at fault, even if the characters aren't at fault. It's a lot easier. Especially because then readers accept it a lot better than if you say, so I totally wrote this badly, then the readers go, excuse you? But if you say, no, the character just misunderstood, they're like, okay, we're good. Alright, so next one is change. Change the way that the system works. Now the caveat with this one is that it needs to be within the current rules that you are changing the way the system works. So, for example, Voldemort can't touch Harry Potter. Well, that would make for a very boring series if it's continued to be that way for the entire series. He'd just constantly be like, Harry, I'm burning. That would be problematic. We wouldn't enjoy that. We'd just be like, Harry's too overpowered, and it's not even his fault. It's because of his mom. Yeah, that sucks. It's not as interesting. It's not as compelling for a hero plot. So she needed to have a way for Voldemort to be able to touch him. If you don't know how this works / haven't watched Harry Potter or read it, I'm sorry. I'm spoiling it for you. But as a result, they say, oh, hey, well, the Dark Lord needs to be reincarnated in a healthy body, so why don't we use an ancient ritual to put Harry's blood inside of him, so now he can touch Harry Potter. Cool. That was a great example of retconning to change the information. She needed him to be untouchable in the first few books, but by book 4, she realized this is going to be a really boring series if I keep this up. And so as a result, she went, oh, okay, how do I fix this? Well, if he has Harry's blood inside of him, he can now touch him. Problem solved. That was a great example of the change in information working within the canon she already had. She already had this information, she already had rituals and potions and all these kinds of things, and so she just added another ritual and potion to be able to fix the problem. Alright, next one. This one I like to call character is. This is when, as I said earlier, you could have a character that could solve all of their problems, And instead of having the character be stubborn, the character goes, yeah, we should have them solve all of our problems. Now you as a writer goes, uh-oh, I don't want them to actually solve all of their problems, but it's in character for them to ask. As a result, keeping them in character is great. You want to make sure they ask if that's genuinely what they would do, 100%. However, you then need to come up with a reason why they can't. So the character is busy. The character is dead. The character is fill in the blank with why they can no longer help this character. A great example of this is Dumbledore was helping get rid of all the Horcruxes, right? He could have totally done it by himself. But then they were like, hey, Voldemort really wants the Elder Wand, we're gonna have to kill Dumbledore. The character is now dead, as we said earlier. So as a result of that, having the character is, and then filling it in the blank with why they can't be there, is actually a really great way of doing this, especially because they don't even have to be in the scene for you to fix this problem.
I'm here.
Hello! Feel free to come sit down.
I lied to you. I can come back for like another week.
That is good.
My Little Pony.
What? Anyway, alright.
I actually love that lock screen.
So, that being said, please close the door so that way we're not bothering patrons. Thank you.
I like bothering the patrons.
I do not, because then that means we have angry patrons coming in here and being like, you shut up.
Then
and
you get
then I get in
fired.
trouble. Yeah, at very least in
Don't
trouble.
get fired, okay?
I definitely don't
Ever.
want to get fired. Thank you.
Don't get fired. We all
But yes,
love you.
so having thank you. So having the character that could potentially fix all their problems be busy, dead,
I
for
love
some reason
being
off the
busy.
planet, whatever. That makes it so it's a lot easier to deal with that character being a problem. You could also make it part of their culture. So for example, this character is perhaps racist against elves, and so they won't help an elf.
bro.
Maybe that's also a problem. So hence why I said character is them fill in your blank with whoever they won't help the person. Make sure that it is in character though. If you've already said this character isn't racist against elves, and then all of a sudden you're like, they're racist against elves, that's
You're
gonna
like,
feel really
what?
weird. Do you have a question? Okay.
What is this topic?
We are talking about retconning, aka the fictional duct tape that helps hold stories together when you cause your own problems.
Oh, okay.
Alright. Next one we are going to talk about is changing the narrative.
I got another one. This one's missing out.
So, a great example of changing the narrative, even though this isn't a actual fictional example, I'm making this one up, is if, for example, you have a grandfatherly character who only mentions having one son, and he always mentions, I have one son, I have one son, I have one son. And then all of a sudden you're like in book 2, but I really want him to have 2
What if he has a
sons.
prodigal son?
Or what if, in this case, with the example I was going to give, was what if his other son he sees as a disgrace and doesn't talk to him? And so he doesn't talk about that son. And so you're like, hey, this is retconning. I only mentioned he had one son, but then there's a reason he only said he had one son. You know what I mean? As a result, you're again fixing your own problem of the fact that you've created a story that's been published, that's been printed, that's been produced, whatever term you want to use. And now you're going, oh crap, that is no longer accurate information. And I need to have a reason to make it inaccurate. Another great way of changing the narrative would be, for example, if you have a character who is supposed to be a traitor or something like that, and you didn't realize that you didn't foreshadow it this entire time.
No.
You're like, I probably should have foreshadowed that. So the best way to make it so it doesn't come out of nowhere and doesn't feel like all of a sudden I am the traitor, and they're all like, no, and the reader's like, what?
Anya's the traitor.
And throws the book across the room. Those moments when you're like, that didn't make any sense. Instead, you change the narrative so that you start having them all of a sudden act suspicious. Or alternatively, if they're not acting suspicious, you have it be so that way they betray them, and then they go, I'm so sorry, I didn't actually want to betray you, they made me, those kinds of things. Those things are the best way to fix these kind of relationship issues, where you have already built up a relationship, and then you go, oh crap, I need to change the relationship dynamic. How do I do that? Another great example of changing the narrative is if you have one character the entire time that is the only point of view, change it up and give another point of view.
Keith.
Give an interesting, give a different point of view that makes you reconsider what you're thinking about things. Makes it so that you feel a little bit different about the character. Instead of only seeing it from one person's point of view, you see it from a different point of view, and your brain suddenly goes, huh, I didn't see that before. So that's a great example of changing the narrative more physically instead of just changing it in context. Alright, so that being said, as I said from the beginning, retconning can be used to such terrible lengths that you're like, this thing is barely being held together by very flimsy duct tape. And then there are other times where retconning can be used like duct tape purses, where it's artful and it's beautiful, and you're like, that's cool. And you're like, this is an interesting way of doing things. But you gotta make sure that you're using it more of the artful way. If you have to barely hold it together, then go for it. If that's necessary, do it. But if it's not necessary, I would say try to find a way to do it more artfully first. There's almost always generally a way to fix plot holes in a way that is much more pretty and much more like makes sense, seems natural. And then there's a way that's just like tape.
I got an example.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if it's artful, but I tried. So basically, I had this one character, and at first he was going to be in like this agency that solves problems and stuff, but then he was also going to be the Royal Guard captain. I was like, how's that working? So instead,
you're like, this isn't.
Yeah, so instead I came up with his sad, depressing backstory. It's not that sad, it's fine. Basically he fails and they fire him, so he's gone now.
Which makes sense.
So that's
That
how I
helps
fixed
change the
plot hole.
narrative, change the relationship, so that way you have a different relationship.
I needed
with
to
it.
give him a backstory anyway, because I couldn't figure out what to do. So then
There you go.
my plot hole fixed my problem.
Exactly. Sometimes your plot holes can help fix your problem. Like I said, there's definitely an art to fixing problems with retconning. If you have any questions regarding retconning or ever notice there's a plot hole in your story, I'd be more than happy to help you brainstorm it. As far as today's lesson goes, we're gonna quickly wrap it up with the announcement of the different contests that we have going on. The Scary Story contest is coming up very soon. It is due on, I believe, October 5th. Might be later than that, but if you turn it in early, that's not a problem. Remember, that one does actually have a $3 entry fee. I'm not in charge of that one. The Friends of the Library is in charge of that one. However, you can submit as many entries as you want, as long as you pay the $3 entry fee. So that's your choice. At least that's the one benefit. I only allow one entry per person, because if I sat there and graded like 9 entries from the same person, I might lose my mind. No matter how good and how well written they were. Holy, that's a lot of reading. Even if they were the best writer ever, I'd be like, I have been here for 8 hours. But anyway, so that being said, Scary Story contest is run a little differently because of the fact that we have the fee. So as a result, a lot of people don't enter more than once because of the entry fee. So if you're willing to pay the entry fee, like, go for it. Besides, it helps provide us with more funds for prizes, books, etc. So like, it helps the library anyway. That being said, then we also have a free, no entry fee, first chapter contest.
I will be entering that one.
Cool.
Look at me, I will.
So the first chapter contest, awesome. I'm so excited to see so many people excited. So the first chapter contest will be in November. And then we will have the Cozy Mystery contest in December. Remember, cozy mystery means that you are free to have murder and mayhem so long as you show it off screen. Basically, that's why it's cozy. So the first chapter contest is going to have the exact same rules and regulations as all of the other contests. The only difference is you write a first chapter.
I can't enter 2.
No.
I actually have 2 this time.
That is awesome, but unfortunately, like I said, I can't spend forever grading entries, so as a result, I've only doing one
father
per person.
or making the characters fight each other.
Honestly, that's
someone else
turn it in for you.
No, we will
Loophole.
catch you.
No, you won't.
I have every year caught people who have double entered. The reason why is because of the fact that I'm a professional editor character, I can tell if your style is the same.
Hey, what if I just add some
How dare you be good at your
non-punctuations
job?
here and there?
Yeah, that's not about style. It's about your word choice.
Yeah, I'll just put duck sauce in there. I found that my friend got it.
Now we'll know it's yours because it will randomly say duck sauce. Anyway.
My friend found duck sauce in the dictionary.
Anyway.
Wait,
so
that's
that,
your word?
so that being said, with the first chapter contest, if you are curious about the rules and regulations, I can always retell them to you, but they should be the same if you've entered into any of our other contests. With the first chapter contest, it is literally just a first chapter from one of your novels. That's it. You don't have to finish the novel. You don't have to write more about the novel. You just write a first chapter, period, and turn it in. One thing I will say though is that we are changing some of the rules to be guidelines and some of the rules to be official rules. The reason why is just because of the fact that we have had a lot of people who have broken a lot of the rules, and some of the rules are more acceptable to break, and some of them are less acceptable to break.
What are some
We had someone
unacceptable?
turn in a story that was 12,000 words long. So, loved it. I loved it. I was like, this is cool. I'm glad you're so passionate. This is great. But also, like, I'm not going to sit here
That's
again
me
for
with
8
my
hours.
lost
and read
essays
this.
when I get too invested. I'm like,
It
I
takes
gotta
too
write
long.
50
I have other
pages.
entries to grade, you know. The main issue is that I have other entries to grade.
What if she made
I
the-
would be happy
what if,
to.
What if they made the font really small?
That's another part of the problem. That technically is part of the rules and guidelines, and so as a result, we do dock points for that. So we will dock. So we're going to change it so that way the guidelines you will get points docked for it because of the fact that it makes it harder for us to grade and harder for us to read. And so as a result, they're not required, but they are highly preferred, and we will give you more points if you follow them. Whereas with the rules, we actually will be having a clause at the end of your little turn-in sheet that you see right there. Right now it just says by submitting this that you accept that it is your own original work. It will now instead also say that if you disobey any of the rules, not the guidelines, that you will be disqualified. Because of the fact that we just have too many entries. We've had an insane amount of entries and it's amping up and it's getting even more, which I am so excited about. Let me tell you right now, so excited.
Jack Skellington.
But that also means that I have to take more time to grade, which means if you go over the word count, or if you have any blood or gore in your story or things like that, then I'm going to be disqualifying it simply because of the fact that I don't have time to read infinite stories. I wish I did. I would love that, but I do.
have a couple pages. So all you gotta do is
this
be able
one
to have the
chapter.
ability to stop
Trying
time.
to make only one chapter.
That
but
would
it
be
didn't
awesome.
fall out.
I would love to be
It's a
able to
really
stop
long
time and just
chapter
grade
now.
stories all day. That would be cool. I would also love that for many other reasons, but like,
All you
yeah.
need to do is roll an at 20.
Roll an at 20 to stop time, like
My
what's his
father is the
name
most
in the
amazing
podcast.
man
Anyway.
in the entire world.
Oh, Mel.
Millel, there we go. I can never remember his name. I don't know why.
Oh, we know
I just know
because
Clockwork
Skin can
Dude.
never say it correctly.
It's fair, fair. But anyway, so that
Not
being
that
said, thank you guys so much for coming. If you'd like to stay, you're more than welcome to ask questions about your grading. If you had your story graded, you're more than welcome to talk to me about your stories in general. You're more than willing to brainstorm. If you'd like, you can take the couch cushions and make a little fort and write under it. I am honestly a very chill person, like as long as you're enjoying yourself.
I've never seen you get mad, and I never do.
Yeah, I really. The funniest part is that I have actually gotten frustrated before at teenagers, but I have a very, very high tolerance. Like you have to be pushing my buttons all day. So thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you agree that I'm very patient.
Yeah, I don't want to see your bad side. Because
You're
the people
awesome.
who seem the most chill get very upset.
This is valid. But anyway, thank you guys so much. I'm going to turn off the video now. If you guys have any questions or concerns that you'd like to talk about, please feel free once I turn off the
Madness
video.
Fireheart.